to all who can hear me, those on the Zoom connection and those here in the room. We're here to hopefully in search of knowledge, community, and love. And I ask you to join me in celebrating most joyously our being here at all. Our speaker today is Michael Eselun. Do you pronounce it Eselun? And I'll read you a brief bio. Michael Eselun serves as a chaplain for the Simsman UCLA Center for Integrative Oncology. Two-time TEDx speaker, Michael speaks extensively to healthcare professionals, patient populations, and faith communities across the country. Long serving as adjunct faculty at the Wiesenthal Center Museum of Tolerance, he's also worked as an activist, educator, addressing anti-LGBTQ bias in the larger community for well over 30 years. Michael was recently inducted into the UCLA Semel Institute Eudaimonia Society in recognition of having lived a meaning-driven life. He has 4 volumes of CDs available for purchase. He has a website, which you can easily find. It's his name, Michael, ESELUN.com. So Michael, ESELUN.com, and you could buy his CDs there. And now it's time for the chalice lighting, and Michael has a reading while I light the chalice.
Good morning. In the words of Kate McGahan, it takes love to hold on when you want to let go. It takes love to let go when you want to hold on. We light the chalice today, ever mindful of the place between holding on and letting go, a place for which the only word we have is love. We light the flame of love within our hearts and within this community.
Now, announcements. If anyone on Zoom has an announcement, indicate and we'll let you make it. You know, anybody, I can't see the Zoom screen, so apparently not. Anyone here have an announcement? Yes, we'll start in the back, Doreen. And Oakley.
I have some additional hard copies of the membership directory with me this morning, which I will leave here and are available if anybody would like to pick up a hard copy.
Okay. I believe we're ready for the opening hymn, which is Morning Has Broken. And we'll have the words up on the screen.
Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the word. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. God's recreation of the new day.
And now it's have a call to worship. Michael will lead us in that.
The call to worship are words by Janet Rebhan and from her book Finding Tranquility Base. I searched among her crayons for a color that represented autumn and pulled out an orange-toned crayon never used. It read bittersweet. And I wondered why that particular name. Autumn was always my favorite time of year. I was always ready for the change. I guess some people didn't see it that way. Some people wanted to cling to summer. I loved both seasons, but I thought no one would ever call spring bittersweet, even though it was just another change, another new cycle, an end to one season and the beginning of another in an endless, never-ending spiral.
Now it's time for joys and sorrows. Does anyone on Zoom have a joy or sorrow they would like to share?
I think we have unison affirmation first, Harry.
We have what?
A unison affirmation after the call to worship and then the reading?
I've skipped to joys and sorrows, haven't I? Yes, absolutely right. So, correction, we're going to the unison affirmation, which I need to find. So, is that up on the screen? Is it up? There we go. So we read this together. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Now there's a reading. Yes, by Mike.
The reading is a poem by Wendell Berry. No, there is no going back. Less and less you are that possibility you were. More and more you have become those lives and deaths that have belonged to you. You have become a sort of grave, containing much that was and is no more in time, beloved then, now, and always. And so you have become a sort of tree standing over the grave. Now more than ever, you can be generous toward each day that comes along, young, to disappear forever, and yet remain unaging in the mind. Every day you have less reason not to give yourself away.
Now we're ready for joys and sorrows. So does anyone on Zoom have a joy or sorrow they'd like to share? The offertory. There are many ways to show our love for this community. One of these ways is by your financial support. Paul will pass the basket while Carole touches our hearts with her music.
I receive? Yes. You can join hands if you want to. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
Michael Eselun is a UCLA oncology chaplain, as I mentioned earlier. Today, do you want me to read this?
You've already done that. I was just going to do
I was going to do the description. You don't need that?
No, I don't need that.
Good.
As we go into a time of silent reflection and contemplation, I invite us to close our eyes if we feel so comfortable and maybe adjust ourselves in our seats. And let's just breathe a few nice, deep breaths together, inhaling and exhaling. And as we do, we quiet our minds, we let go of the concerns of the day, the week behind us, the week ahead of us, and we simply follow the empty breath. We come back to that image of the love that resides in that mysterious place between holding on and letting go, a place we might at times call bittersweet. We breathe into a place beneath our need to characterize it as one thing or another, a place in which we can simply surrender into the constant state of change, the endless, never-ending spiral of life. A few years ago, a dear friend and former colleague at the Sims Mann Center where I work, Lorelei Bonet, was preparing a lecture to give to an upcoming oncology social work conference. What are you going to talk about, Lorelei? I asked. Ecotones, she said. I never heard that word before. What, is that some kind of a retro punk environmental cover band? Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for the ecotones. No, she went on to explain it's those transitional zones in nature between two adjacent ecosystems or communities that are not exactly one thing or the other, like where maybe a grassland meets a forest or where a river meets the sea. I love that there was a word for these places in nature that fascinate me. She was using it as a metaphor for places that cancer patients often find themselves, caught between two competing realities. I love it as a metaphor for any of us as we move into life's deeper mysteries, crossing boundaries and thresholds into territory that is not exactly one thing or the other, despite all of our need and desire to see it as such. And yet I find it is in those liminal places that perhaps we have greater access to something we might even call truth, or perhaps even brush up against the sacred. In the summer of 2005, I took a week-long seminar on Cape Cod with Thomas More, the well-known author and psychologist. He's made his life's work a study of the nature of soul. He constructed the workshop in such a way that we only spent half days together because he wanted us to spend the other half of the day out on the Cape, letting it work its magic on us. He didn't have to tell me twice. I fell in love with the place, particularly the marshes and wetlands, these ecotones that are not exactly land or sea, changeable moment to moment with the shifting of the tide. That love affair continues to this day, so much so that nearly every summer ever since, Scott and I spend a week in Provincetown at the very tip of Cape Cod. And one of my favorite things to do there is to float effortlessly on the incoming or outgoing tide over the marsh, swallowed up into this magical netherworld of the ecotone. Sunrise or sunset can be a kind of ecotone too, a time of day that is neither light nor dark, neither day nor night. I love the word evening for its unintended implication, an evening out of day into night. And yet it's in that narrow time frame that we get to experience all that magical color and those deep, rich shadows. In February of 2019, I got to take a 2-week solo trip across southern India from east to west, starting in Chennai, ending in Cochin. The penultimate stop of my itinerary was a teeny village called Muthuvankudi, high in the mountains, the Western Ghats they're called, of Kerala. It's an area that's known for tea and spice plantations, not far from the town of Munnar. I spent 2 nights in the Ecotones Lodge, if you can imagine. 8 Spartan rooms situated in the most stunning landscape imaginable. One night I was the only guest in the lodge. When I arrived, I booked 2 guided walks with a local guide, Vishak. Vishak was 27, he was bright, he was curious, he was engaging. He knew everything about every crop, every animal, every plant. He knew everything about every bird in the neighborhood. He had a wanderer's heart himself, and he dreamed of destinations far from Kerala, though not quite sure he'd even heard of Los Angeles. Our first walk would be the afternoon that I arrived, a spice and culture walk, he called it. We walked down lanes through plantations and farms, through jungles and fields, talking every step of the way, just about everything. It was an enchanted afternoon. We even got caught in an afternoon thunderstorm, and we took refuge on the porch of one of the houses in the village, and as soon as the woman of the house saw that I was out on the porch, she quickly brought out a chair for me to sit. Like I say, it was an enchanted afternoon. Our next walk would be the next morning, a sunrise walk. Vishak told me he'd pick me up at 5:30. I set the alarm for 5 o'clock. Got up, took an ice-cold shower because 10 more minutes of sleep seemed more precious than the slim chances of getting any hot water. And I got dressed and went outside a little early because my host, C. Joe, had promised me a hot cup of tea before the walk. When I stepped outside of my room, the super full moon was still high in the sky, illuminating the landscape in this eerie, silvery glow, casting moon shadows everywhere. The breathing stillness of the morning soothed my spirit, the silence, the coolness. Thank goodness when Vishak arrived, he brought a flashlight, because once we got under the canopy of trees, it was so dark you could not see your hand in front of your face. We walked in silence mostly. The only sound was the crunch of gravel under our feet. But soon birds began to awake and call to one another, and then there was a call to prayer from a nearby mosque. And soon, in a few steps more, I heard a gong and chanting sounds from a Hindu temple. Once we emerged out from under the canopy of trees back into the moonlight, we didn't need the flashlight any longer. Vishak took a hard left turn up a steep path. "This way, Michael," he cried out. I followed him. We scrambled up over some rocks and boulders until we landed on this plinth, this enormous slab of granite high on a precipice with this stunning view of the valley below and these mountains surrounding it. "We will wait here for the sun," he said. "Okay?" Oh, it was more than okay. Emily Dickinson once wrote, "I'll tell you how the sun rose, one ribbon at a time." It wasn't like that for me that morning. I was transfixed by the clouds hovering over the mountaintops in the moonlight, creating another kind of ecotone. You couldn't tell where the land ended and the sky began. But soon a pink glow began to emerge from behind one of the mountains, and just then a renegade appendage of cloud swirled up, its edges catching the hidden sunlight. It looked like a fire-breathing dragon for a moment and just as quickly disappeared. And then the sun shone itself and announced the beginning of a brand new day. We sat there for maybe 45 minutes or so. Soon there was more singing, chanting, men's voices in Latin this time from the Catholic Church down in the valley beneath us. And when they stopped singing, women's voices began to sing. And then the two blended in an exquisite harmony. It was a moment of sheer perfection. Everyone needs this every once in a while, Vishak said. Oh, yes, they do, I agreed. Vishak, does this ever get old for you? Is this just another day at work? No, I like this, he said. It's never quite the same. I felt the oddest combo platter of feelings in that moment. I felt this urgent need to imprint my memory with every color, every smell, every sensation, because I had this acute awareness, I will never pass this way again. And of course, that's true of every moment in which we live, isn't it? But somehow it seemed more true on that rock in that moment. And as one who is, I'm embarrassed to say, essentially greedy, always wanting more, I found myself wondering, how many more trips like this can I even have? Even with the best of luck, the years left for me are fewer than the years I've had some of the clothes in my closet. So there was a kind of sadness too, but also longing for everyone I loved, wishing they could be with me on that rock there and enjoy this, witness this together, especially my mom. But don't get me wrong, the essential feeling was one of deep, profound gratitude for this moment, for this opportunity, and a sense of enoughness. This moment is enough. This lifetime is enough. Vishak, I asked, do you know what that word ecotones means, the name of the lodge where I'm staying? Yes, I think it means like eco-friendly, no? And I said, no, it actually means it's a place in nature where two ecosystems meet that aren't exactly one thing or the other, like where a river meets the sea or a meadow meets a mountain, or where your life, as different as it is from mine, meets here on this rock, just for this moment. Yes, he said. I wasn't entirely sure he understood the depth of my meaning, but I knew I was experiencing something sacred, something akin to Holy Communion. Living with cancer can definitely be a kind of ecotone caught between competing realities. I walk beside countless patients who wrestle with, how do I hold this? How do I make decisions going forward? Do I live as if I have all the time in the world, or do I live as if today might be my last day? And what if it's neither? What if it's both? And if I have to live as if today is my last day, how do I live with that kind of pressure to make every moment so profound and make it count? I can't do that. And wouldn't it rob me of the simplicity of everyday pleasures? Wouldn't it rob me of the luxury of wasting time? The process of dying is a kind of ecotone too. As anyone can attest who's walked beside a loved one through their dying process, a process that can take years, watching someone slip away by inches, wondering how much of the person we knew and loved is even still there. Such was the case with my mom over the last 4 or 5 years of her life, as dementia enshrouded her sense of clarity, even her sense of herself, into a kind of fog, only parting every now and then to give us a rare glimpse of the mom we knew and remembered, only to be swallowed up again until a recurrence of lung cancer and COPD showed her to the final exit. I saw her for the last time on March 30th, 2019, not long after I got back from India, and she would die 8 days later on April 7th. A year earlier, May 2018, Mother's Day, Scott and I went to see her. She lived on the Central Coast near Morro Bay. Just to get her out of the house, we took her into San Luis Obispo to go out to lunch, walked around a little bit, and then we just parked it on a bench right there in the main plaza in front of the mission. It was a beautiful day, but it was also exasperating to listen to the same closed-loop tape of frustration and anger and resentment and disappointment and anecdotes I'd heard 10,000 times before. But still, as I say, it was a beautiful day, and it seemed far more pleasant to have this conversation, if you will, here, rather than to sit for endless hours in her mobile home in front of HGTV. But just then, an idea dropped into my head from someplace else altogether. 16 years earlier, after my mom had survived lung cancer treatment, I took a couple days off of work to go see her with the express purpose of interviewing her exhaustively on videotape about her life. Not only the story, but what did she pick up along the way? What kind of wisdom? In those 2 days, we made 6 hours of tape. I had never listened to the interview or watched the tape since we made it. But there, sitting on that bench in San Luis Obispo, the thought occurs to me, Mom, you maybe want to go back to your house and watch that videotape of that interview we made 16 years ago? Of course, she had no recollection that the tape existed or that we ever did the interview, but she was game. Sure, honey, that sounds like fun. Let's do that. My intention was twofold. I wondered what kind of gift might there be for my mom to give her her own story back to herself? Might there even be a kind of magic in that? What's more, I was hoping to reconnect with that version of my mom I so dimly remembered. And that's not accurate. Of course, I remember her. I just couldn't connect that version of my mom with this addled and angry woman in front of me. So that's what we did. Over that afternoon and evening, we got through 4 hours of the tape in 2 sittings. My mom was transfixed by the whole enterprise, though thoroughly confused, asking, where was this done again and why did we do it? Asking only inches away from where the camcorder had been set up. Look, Mom, it's your same front door right over your right shoulder there. But she was enthralled with the woman on the screen. This is so weird, honey. I mean, I know that's me up there, and I remember these stories when she tells them, but it doesn't feel like me. She seems so professional-like. I know, I was shocked too. But this is fun, honey, she said. Thanks for doing it. The hour grew late, she was tired, so we all went to bed. The next morning, she had no recollection that we watched the tape or that it even existed. A month later, we went to see her again and would watch the last 2 hours. For a host of reasons, this would be a far more emotionally intense experience. I'd long forgotten that her late beloved Glenn made a surprise appearance in our interview. Oh, there's my Glennie, my mom howled. Hi, honey. It was so sweet to see his smiling face again. I did remember that my mom had closed our interview with a rather tearful valedictory to each of her 3 kids, wanting us to remember above all else how much she loved us. To my shock and amazement, the next morning my mom remembered everything. Wasn't that something last night? She said, I just can't get over it. And you know what, honey? It makes me feel like it's not so bad to get old because I just don't care anymore. Everything that used to matter so much and get me so upset just doesn't matter, so I feel free. Thank you, honey. The tide had brought my mom back to me for a moment, and we could float around in that ecotone. Maybe even catch a glimpse of the eternal before she drifted off again. In February of 2019, just before I went to India, my sister Terry threw my mom the most splendid 90th birthday party. Friends and family from far and wide came. My mom commented to my sister as she was coming into the party, "I'm looking forward to saying goodbye to everybody." Shortly after the party, she declined sharply, and after a week or so in the hospital and a few days in rehab, she was sent home on hospice. Just to give my sister Terry a break, who had done all the heavy lifting with respect to my mom's care in recent years, truly a heroic job, I took a couple days off work to go relieve her. I knew that this would likely be the last time I'll ever see my mom, though she did not. She did not understand she was not going to get any better. She did not understand that she was on hospice. I, of course, had my hopes and expectations of how I wanted that time to be. I wanted to be so fully present and conscious as we crossed this threshold together. I'm sure it'll surprise nobody here to know that life doesn't always give us what we want. I was present to her as a caregiver, as a chaplain of sorts, but not as her son exactly. I couldn't quite connect to the emotional gravity of where we found ourselves. And I was so consumed with the next task, getting the next meal ready, the next meds ready, the next breathing treatment ready, answering the same question 3,000 times as patiently as I could. But I was present to her. When she came home from the rehab, she was thoroughly confused and disoriented. On one hand, she knew it was her house, but she would ask, "Was my bedroom always here? Did I always have 2 windows on that wall? Was my TV always in the corner?" In the oddest way, I was having a parallel experience of disorientation. Is this really my mom? Is this really the last time I'm going to see her? Forever? But I was present to her. In the spring of 2006, thanks to my husband, Scott, I took my mom on a 1-week trip to Spain. We had the most wonderful time. One afternoon, we were in Cordoba, and we were walking back to the bus stop to catch the bus back to our hotel, and there was a bit of a chill in the air, and we were on the shady side of the street. So I said, "Mom, let's cross the street and let's walk on the sunny side." And just like that, we both broke into spontaneous song. Grab your coat and get your hat. Leave your worry on the doorstep. Just direct your feet to the sunny side of the street. There we were, my mom and me, singing and dancing our way across the street in Cordoba, Spain. That last day, I would see her that Saturday before I had to come home. We were sitting at her breakfast table, and I was reminiscing with her and trying to remind her about some of the wonderful trips we had been on. And I reminded her of that trip to Spain and when we sang that song. And just like that, she sang again and knew every single word. That too was a kind of ecotone, sharing that song together from our very disparate realities, a bridge between us, which in the end are not so disparate after all. But still, the moment I had dreaded since I was 4 years old, and the nuns at Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church in Long Beach explained to these little tykes that we're all going to die, even my mom. Well, that day was here, and I wasn't there for it. Not in the way I wanted to be. But we did have our song. That next August, after she died, Scott and I had our week in Provincetown, and one afternoon, I was out on the beach, huddled under my umbrella, tucked into the side of a sand dune in the pouring rain. I was watching the tide come in over the marsh so it could get deep enough for me to go float out there. Like my mom, I always loved the rain, and that afternoon I was the only one out on the beach at Herring Cove. Earlier that morning, my brother Steve had sent my sister Terry and me an email. He'd come across a poem my mom had written. She had always written poetry ever since she was a lovesick teenager working in the box office at the Old Egyptian Theater in downtown Long Beach. alone in the box office and in life, it would seem. Based on the tone of this poem, I'm guessing she wrote it before Glenn came into her life. Maybe she was in her late 50s, mid 60s, roughly my age at the time. She called the poem Ageless, and she was reflecting on the soothing feelings that she got whenever it rained, feelings that were just as vivid now as they had been when she was a much younger woman, even when she was a little girl, which led her to conclude that we are ageless in a way. At least in the way life can get inside, we can let it inside and let it work us over. Over the last few years of her life, it was harder and harder to connect to that ageless part of her. And now that she's been gone 4 years, it's hard to know which version of my mom I'm even remembering, which one am I missing and grieving, which is the essential part. There I was that afternoon on the beach, staring at my phone, reading and rereading that poem, trying to connect to that part, and I just couldn't. But my friend Rosa reminds me that a womb is an ageless place too, a kind of ecotone that is neither existence nor non-existence, and it's wet. What better place could there be, Michael, for you than in that earthly womb of that sand dune, soaking wet? What better place could there be to contemplate your mother? That experience of the ecotone, the bridge between two worlds, can be akin to something one of my patients once called a God moment. A moment in which not much really happens, but the stuff and business of life falls away, just leaving room and space for awareness that this moment is all that there is, and that there's room for love. A moment like floating effortlessly on the incoming tide over the marsh in Provincetown, or a moment like sharing a beautiful sunrise with Vishak on some mountaintop in Kerala, India, or a moment like singing a song one last time with my mom. Ageless, perhaps, yes, after all, with gold dust at my feet on the sunny side of the street. So be it. Thank you. Of all the many condolence messages I received after my mom's death, this one from my friend Buck meant the most, and sadly, we lost Buck 3 years ago, too. He told me, he says, "I'm sorry to hear about your mother passing. She was wonderful, and I loved her. I smile thinking of her. She loved you kids and made that clear. I remember one Sunday morning when she was with you when you spoke in Santa Monica. We sat next to each other, talking and joking, always comfortable that way together. Then things got underway and we quieted down, but I kept an eye on her. She was smiling and looking around at the congregation, listening intently, hungry for what you were saying, connecting. She could tell you had a gift, could communicate your heart, touch other hearts. She leaned into me and whispered, 'That's my son up there.' And it was said with an equal mix of happiness, wonder, admiration, and great pride. And then at the end, without skipping a beat, she said, 'I just wish they sang some songs I know.' So in honor of my mom, let's all sing a song she knew." Are they gonna, there they are.
Yes. So let's all stand and sing our best version of Sunny Side of the Street. Grab your coat and get your hat. Leave your worries on the doorstep. Just direct your feet to the sunny side side of the street. Can't you hear that pitter-pat? And that happy tune is your step. Life can be so sweet on that sunny side of the street. I used to walk in the shade with those blues on parade, but I'm not afraid. This rover crossed over. If I never have a cent, I will be rich as Rockefeller. A gold dust at my feet on the sunny side of the street. I used to walk in the shade with those blues on parade. But I'm not afraid, I'm not afraid. This rover crossed over. If I never have a cent, I will be rich as Rockefeller. Gold dust at my feet. We're gonna be beginning on the sunny, on the sunny, on the sunny, sunny side of the street.
Thank you, Michael. I'm going to extinguish the chalice, and Michael has a benediction for us.
You can stand or sit if you like. Maybe close your eyes, maybe take the hand of the one next to you or not. And let's just breathe. In our mind's eye, let's imagine us in a great circle, taking hands with one another. And as we do, we feel the energy that passes between us and connects us in the family of things. As we consider again the image of the ecotone, the place between two worlds, a timeless place, may we keep our eyes and hearts open for those mystical places within us. May we float effortlessly in those places and discover the love that is there for us, ageless love, and may we give it away freely. So be it. Please join me in singing our closing song.
Have a lovely day.